Hey friend, welcome. If we haven't met yet, I'm Jen. I'm a part-time online clothing reseller, which means I go to thrift stores, I buy used clothes, I list them on eBay and Poshmark, and I sell them hopefully for a profit. Today is Wednesday, February 4th, and usually I do a ship with me video and I kind of chronicle what sells on a day-to-day basis for a part-time reseller. But unfortunately, I had 0 sales yesterday, so I don't have anything to ship with you today. But I am going to be able to share with you my numbers for the full month of January 2024. So just to kind of get some perspective, I am a part-time reseller. I am a full-time stay-at-home mom. I homeschool my kids. This is something I do on the side. If I had to, I do at the end, I'll break down like my hours, but I probably spend somewhere between 10 to 25 hours a week. During January, it's been probably closer to the $15 or 15-hour mark on my reselling business. And I'll break that down a little bit later. I do sell mostly clothing, mostly women's clothing. I sold 138 items in January, and out of those 138, 131 were clothing items. So my top categories are women's sweaters, women's coats, men's sweaters, and those are mostly vintage, actually like all vintage, dresses, and women's tops. So again, mostly women's clothes. My top brands are Vintage, Torrid, which is a plus size brand, Athleta, Catherine's, which is again a plus size brand, and Levi's, which is kind of interesting. I was able to go back and look at January of 2023. No, I'm sorry, 2024. And you got it? Okay. I have a helper who is my videographer today. So, yeah, I was able to look at last year's January numbers and sales. And it was just very interesting to kind of compare. It was a very similar, which makes sense because I have not changed much within my reselling business. I pretty much list the same types of things, the same amount of things. Anyway, my top brands last year were Chico's, Levi's again, Quaker Factory, American Eagle, which is so funny, and again, Athleta, which I thought was kind of interesting, that just that comparison. So we'll talk a little bit about the comparison as we go along. The other thing I meant to mention at the beginning is I am going to talk a little bit about the restructuring of fees on eBay. I do primarily sell on eBay. 70% of my sales were on eBay. 18% were on Poshmark. I do list on Depop as well, not as much. I have, I think, 300 items listed on Depop right now. I sold about 10% of my items were on Depop and 2% on Curtsy. So I have, at the beginning of January, I had about 1,200 items on eBay listed and Poshmark. I cross-listed both using Vendoo, which is where I get all of my information. Don't move, honey. Don't move. So I cross-list using Vendoo, and I cross-list everything to Poshmark. I started everything on eBay. So while I do, lost my train of thought, which is kind of common. Okay, so in January of 2025, I sold a total of 138 items. So my total revenue, which was all that was paid to me through my reselling platforms, was $3,359.96. Now, I don't get to keep all of that money. There are fees, there are shipping costs, and there are, cost of goods. There are also other things that incur as well, and we'll talk about those in a bit. So when I take out the fees, the shipping costs, and the cost of goods, my profit is $1,931.80. Now, my goal is $2,000 per month. Like I said, I'm part-time. This is extra money for my family. It's important money for my family, but I'm not paying our mortgage or buying our food with this money. My husband does work full-time. So this is money that, you know, helps our family go on trips. It helps our family with, you know, violin and piano lessons and dance and gymnastics and volleyball fees and just all the things that go along with having a family. So $2,000 is my goal. 1,931, just shy of that goal. Now, I did make some sales at the end of January that did not get recorded in January. So if I kind of look at it like that, I probably did actually get my goal, but those will be recorded or were recorded in February. And so those will go towards my February numbers. I'm less than $70 off my mark. I'm okay with that. I think that's pretty good. Last year in January, I made $1,829.84. So I am up, you know, about $100 from last January. Jen's down again. Good job. I did sell 139 items, like I said. $24.35 is my average sale price. That is up from last month. Went off the rails a little bit there, sister. And but it's down from last year. It's down from what is kind of my yearly average, and I'll tell you why. It's up. The feather, can see. It's up from last month because I did a huge clearance sale. I did that again in January, and so that's still why it's still down, but I didn't sell quite as many things from that clearance sale in January as I did in December. And so that's why my average sale price is usually around $25, $26. So it's around $24 now because of that clearance sale. But it is up from last month because I didn't sell quite as much within that clearance sale. I hope that is clear. I think I started saying earlier and didn't finish. I started January with $1,200 or 1,200 roughly items in my store. And now I currently have about 900 items. Part of the reason I had a clearance sale is because I had things from 2023 that I wanted to clear out and not have in my inventory anymore. I hope this isn't too awful to watch. I was like going through, like, do I take the time to try and figure out, I don't have a tripod to set up in here. Anyway, I was getting rid of things that I had listed in 2023, things that were over a year old. I did take out roughly 300 items. I did keep about 20, I think, that I just felt were higher quality. Maybe, I don't know. There's also a few things that I kept to like re-photograph and relist in a brand new way. Anyway. I also kept some sweaters that I probably will get rid of after, like March or so, after I feel like sweater weather is over. Anyway, I've lost my train of thought again, which is never good. Okay. Getting rid of things in 2023. So I did purge quite a bit, and I'm happy with it. I did a video of my closet, not my closet, my space, my reselling space last week, and just kind of showed, everything that is in my space and what I use and how I use it and how it's stored. And my space is rather small. I work in my garage, and so, I only have so much space. I think that if I had unlimited space or a much larger space, I would probably keep more. But I'm pleased with the clean out that I did, the purge that I did. So one thing that someone asked me, and I haven't answered it yet because I'm behind on comments, but someone was like, how much did you actually list? How much did you actually sell of the items that you listed in 2023? And I thought that was such a great question. So I actually I did some guesstimating because I don't have exact I don't have exact numbers from 2023 because I didn't start using Vendu until 2020. Well, it was like November of 2023 when I started using Vendu. This year I listed 1,800 items, and last year would have been roughly the same. Like I said, I haven't really changed much in my business. I'm still listing pretty consistently the same amount of items. I fluctuate between 5 and 10 items a day. It just kind of depends on how busy I am. In the summer, I tend to list a little bit more. During the school year, I list a little bit less. That has been pretty consistent since I started reselling 3 years ago. So I took out about 300 items from my inventory that I listed in 2023. And like I said, I kept, I think, about 20 items that are still there. So to round it out, let's say 400. So didn't sell 400 of those 1,800 items that I listed. I did the math earlier and I forget the exact percentage, but it was a little over 70, I think it was like 72% of the items that I listed in 2023 did sell. So that is kind of encouraging, and I'm excited to see what that number is for 2024 in a year when I pull all of those out. So hopefully it will be even more. I'm doing better at learning different styles and what's actually selling, and yeah, it'll just be interesting to see. Okay, so one thing I did want to address was fees. I didn't write down all the numbers. I've been sick. So this is my brain when it's sick. My brain when it's normal and healthy is not always great. Anyway, I wanted to talk about fees. So the fee structure is changing on eBay, which, like I said, is my primary platform. I sell 70% of my items on eBay. So currently for clothing, which again is primarily what I sell, the fee structure is 12.35%, plus there's like a fixed percentage. And then it's going to go up starting February 14th, I believe. So that will be 12.7%. So it's going up 0.35%. And I thought, I mean, that could be significant, especially I would imagine like bigger stores, bigger items, more things. So what I did was took that 12.35% and figured out what the difference is. So the difference that I would have paid in January is $9.44 in January. If the new fee structure was in place, I would have paid an additional $9.44, which, I mean, yeah, that's almost $10. That is significant. But to me, that's not crippling. I don't really ever complain about the fees because I think that it's important. I'm paying for a service when I'm paying those fees. So eBay does all my marketing for me. eBay, there's like the shipping stuff. My husband just texted me. There's things happening around me. I'm sorry. Okay. I don't have to deal with sales tax, which if I was a brick and mortar store, I would have to be dealing with sales tax. Even if I had just an online store, I would still have to be, oh my word, I would have to deal with sales tax from 50 different states, and that would be insane. And I don't have to deal with any of that. And so for me, I feel like I'm happy. I don't know if happy is the word. I'm happy to pay the fees because I'm paying for a service. It's part of the service that they're providing for me to be able to do this. So, I go, okay, $9.44. That's okay. Okay, but Jen, that's going to add up over time. Yeah, absolutely it is. You're right. So what I did was I went back and looked at, I feel like I'm coming across as sounding sarcastic. I'm not meaning this at all to be sarcastic at all. I went back and looked at my numbers from 2024 for the whole year. And if that fee structure had been in place, I would have paid an additional $97.91 in fees. Yeah, that's an extra $100 that I could have used in another way. Absolutely. And going forward, that is something that I will have to take into consideration. But I don't know. I guess for me, it's just not something that I am willing to get like all upset about. I know that, that there are some people who are upset, and I can imagine that, you know, if people are selling 10, 100 times as much as I sell, I can imagine that that'd be really, really significant and could be really scary. So I'm not trying to like minimize what other people are going through and how they're feeling. But for me, I just think it's a cost of doing business. Everything is getting more expensive. So why wouldn't the fees be getting more expensive? I don't know. I think it's just part of it. I find that I am, you know, pricing my things a little bit higher now sometimes. Just because things are more expensive. Thrift stores are getting more expensive. All right. I wanted to talk about other costs. So there are other costs involved with this is not going well. Okay. My daughter, here, let me show you. My daughter is currently putting a scarf on the dog.
There you go.
I don't know how you compete with this, really.
Cha-cha.
Lots of scarves on the dog. Okay, so like I said, I already in my numbers took out my cost of goods, my fees, and the amount that it takes for me to pay for shipping labels. So there are other costs. So I pay for Vendu. I already told you that. It's $25 a month. I pay for Prime Lister, which does my automation for Poshmark, and I pay $25 a month for that. I pay for my eBay store subscription. I pay $60 a month for that. I actually need to look at that because I think I'm paying one too high. I think I need the lower one, especially now that I've purged. I think I can get away with the lower one. So that's $110 a month that I am paying for subscriptions to help run my business. I bought something on Amazon for $16.03, whether it's shipping supplies or, you know, sometimes I have to buy like OxyClean. Actually, I think it was OxyClean, to like, I use that for, soaking things if they have stains. I just today had to buy tissue paper. You know, there's other things that I have to buy to help run my business. A couple years ago, my husband built all the shelves out in my storage area, and I had to buy all that wood and the screws and all of those things. Thankfully, I didn't have to pay for his labor, but I also have to pay for inventory coming in, and so I paid $407.68. I think that might be a little high. I think that maybe I had some personal receipts mixed in there when I went over that, because that just I feel like I did not go thrifting that much. I know I did one thrift trip at my favorite thrift store where I got all those coats, but that was only $150. And I know there were a couple like I just ran in and got like one or two things a few times, but I don't know. I guess I did go thrifting with my sister.
Which one?
My sister. Anyway. Okay, so when I take all of those costs out, my subscription costs, my fee costs, the things I bought on Amazon, and the inventory that I bought this month, my total profit comes down to $1,398.09. Now, I do expect you know, that money to come out. I do expect to put money back into my business from the profit that I make. And I say that probably every other video or something. You might hear me say that. But I like to break it down. Oh my word, my brain is just fried right now. I'm so sorry. I like to break it, I'm almost done. I like to break it down by how much I make per hour. And I definitely overestimated the hours that I worked in January, especially considering like the last week of it, I was sick. And the first week of it was Christmas break and I did not work at all. So anyway, if I break down that $1,398.09 per week, it is $349.52. I will let you know, I only divided the weeks by 4, not 4.3. Mom, you don't need to text me about my math. I'm just teasing, but she did text me once. She was like, you know, there's 4.3 weeks in a month. Yes, I do know that. It's just easier for me in the moment. And again, like I said, I overestimate on how much I have actually worked. So I feel like that kind of helps round it out. I say I work 25 hours a week. That's probably the most I work. I take about an hour a week to ship. 6 days a week. This is terrible. This is a terrible video. I'm so sorry. Yeah, 6 days a week. It's about an hour to ship and about an hour to list. I'm finding right now it's not taking me an hour to list. It's taking me about 20 minutes. So that's already overestimated. It's also about 2 times a week I take a 3-hour chunk and I work on inventory, whether it's photographing, whether it's cleaning up my space, whether it's putting things away. I just work in some way. And then I take about 6 hours once a week for thrifting. Now, I've only done that once this week, and the other thrifts were just part of other trips that I was already taking. So like my daughter had an appointment in Fort Wayne and we stopped at a little thrift store in Fort Wayne. Like I said, I went thrifting with my sister, but that was just like about hanging out with my sister, but I found some things while I was there. So to me, that doesn't feel like work. That just feels like adding a little trip on. So I don't necessarily count that within my hours. Anyway, all of that to say, at the most, I work 25 hours a week. So that makes $13.98 an hour, $14 an hour. Might not seem like a lot, but it's definitely more than I made at my last job. And with this job, I don't have to leave my house other than to go thrifting. And when I do go thrifting, I can take my children if I choose, which I don't always choose, but sometimes they go with me. And it's something that I enjoy. Whereas, not that I didn't enjoy my last job, but it was very stressful on my family. And this is just less stressful on my family. It's something that the majority of it I can do with them, beside them, around them. You know, my children are in here right now. They're whispering. You can probably hear them. But that it's just something that brings me joy. And so for me, maybe $14 an hour isn't a lot for you, but for me, it's worth it for the job that I do. All right. So I think we've talked about a little bit of everything.
Wait, show the video of this.
Oh, I already showed. It's okay. All right. So, yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I would love to hear how January was for you. How did the year start out? Hopefully on a good note. I feel like I'm happy with this, the way it started, especially considering how little I did put into it. Oh yeah, it's about to go down in here. So thank you so much for joining me. Make sure you like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and if you enjoy kind of chaotic, chatty videos, like I said, usually I do a ship with me video, but it does tend to end up a little bit chaotic and chatty. So, all right. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I'll see you soon.